This is a summary of part 6 of David Hume's dialogues concerning natural religion. In part 5, Philo has just given a scathing critique of Cleanthes' argument for the existence of God. And at the beginning of part 6, Demea wants to say a few words. He thinks that Cleanthes' a posteriori argument is a weak foundation for true religion. The a posteriori argument doesn't give a very solid confidence, he believes, and instead you'll need some kind of a priori argument. Well, Philo's not done yet. Philo still wants to add a few words to his critique, and so he says that he's got a new principle, one that's related to Cleanthes' earlier principle. You'll recall that one was that like effects arise from like causes. So this new principle states, where several known circumstances are observed to be similar, the unknown will also be found similar. And he gives an example. If we see the limbs of a human body, we conclude that it is also attended with a human head, though hid from us. So he says, look at the universe and notice how it resembles an animal body. Both of these things have parts, they have motion, they have circulation, and they even repair themselves. So an animal body comes with a head or a soul. So the universe or the world must also come with a head or a soul. And we'll call that head God or a deity. Notice how this is a different conclusion from Cleanthes' earlier one, which was that Cleanthes was arguing for a first cause or a designer. In this case, we have a world soul. Philo thinks that Cleanthes shouldn't be surprised about this because philosophers through the ages have come to the same conclusion. He says that those philosophers were very familiar with their own bodies and minds and how they never encountered the two of these things unattached. So when you see the resemblance of a body, of an animal body in nature, then you can rightly conclude that there must be some sort of soul or mind attached to it as well. Cleanthes is very surprised by this. He's never heard this argument, and he wants some time to think about it. But he doesn't take very long because in the next section he says, Philo, no, this is not a very good analogy. These two things are dissimilar. He says, quote, there are no organs of sense, no seat of thought or reason, no one precise origin of motion and action in nature. In fact, he thinks nature has a better resemblance to vegetables than animals. He also thinks that Philo's view of nature here, this argument, entails an infinite past, one that's eternal and had no beginning. But he thinks that's absurd, and he gives several arguments in support of this. He says the first one, which he admits is not very strong, is based on the recent development of the arts and sciences. He says that because arts and sciences have come so late in human history, if the past were eternal, arts and sciences would have been around for a much longer time. But he admits it's possible that because of the convulsions of human history and revolutions, we may have lost that knowledge and now only just recently rediscovered it. But in the next section, he thinks he has a better argument, the one based on cherry trees. So apparently there are these cherry trees in Europe which were at some point brought over from Asia, and they're doing very well in Europe. And so he says that if the past were eternal, then these trees would have found their way to Europe much earlier and would be thriving even more. But we can pinpoint the time when they've been brought over, and so the past must not be eternal. And then in the next paragraph, he says that there are these vines, there are horses, cows, and sheep and swine which have been introduced to new continents and have been doing very well. But if the past were eternal, then it wouldn't be so new. We would find these creatures already there, already introduced. But Philo pushes back and says, how do you know there haven't been these convulsions? How do you know there haven't been these devastating events in human history or the history of the world which have wiped out these things and then required them to be reintroduced? He thinks that a view of history like this, that includes things like convulsions, is compatible with the principle of order being inherent in the natural objects, and that these natural objects would be able to survive in some way these devastating these devastating convulsions. So he thinks that in his opinion, the order of things are found in the natural objects themselves. But whether you believe that, he says, or whether you believe in polytheism or theism, and we might even add in a type of pantheism or panentheism with this new argument he introduces, he thinks there's no good reason to prefer one system over another. And so all of them are equally valid or, well, we might say invalid. I hope you find that helpful.